Hi, this is Ralph Zuranski. I'm on the phone with David Frey. He's one of the world's greatest marketers, and I had the unique opportunity of seeing David at Stu McLaren's Idea Incubator. I was very impressed with what David had to say, and so I wanted to interview him as a hero. David, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thanks for having me, Ralph.
Could you tell me a little bit about what you do?
Yes, as you mentioned, I'm a marketer, and I'm down here in Houston, Texas. The name of my company is Marketing Best Practices, and I was a consultant for a large consulting firm throughout the 90s, and eventually I went into the industry portion of the business world, and I was a senior vice president of marketing in a $500 million company. And eventually, my company merged with a German company, and so I started my own company called Marketing Best Practices. And what we do is sell information products to small business owners. I also have a niche information marketing business in the hot tub retailers and pool builders niche. And I also pursue a few other niches with information products. And so mainly I'm an information marketer. I have several other companies that do other different things, but that's pretty much what I'm known for over the internet and here locally.
I was really impressed when you talked about getting products and producing them quickly and getting them to the market. Could you tell the people listening a little bit about that?
Well, as an information marketer, the speed in which you create your products is very important because that coincides with how much money you're going to make and how fast you're going to make it. And so there are numerous ways to create products without actually having to write your own product. And normally when we think about information products, we think of books and e-books, and those things require you to sit down and write. And when someone's required to sit down and write, it usually takes them a long time. The project completion percentage goes way down. A lot of projects just get forgotten and given up on. But the presentation that you saw down in Los Angeles, I gave 38 different ways to create an information product very, very quickly. And some of them, well, many of them, most of them, don't require you to pick up a pen at all to write. So there's a lot of ways to create information products very, very quickly with very little effort on your part. In fact, one of those ways we're doing right now, Ralph, in an interview. You're interviewing me and getting content out of me, and this eventually will be part of a product. And so,
yep, that's true. Well, David, I wanted to ask you a couple questions about heroes and heroes in your life. What is the dream or vision that sets the course of your life?
Well, first of all, I want to be with my family forever. I have a wife whose name is Ingrid. I've got 2 children. My son, Sterling, is 8 years old right now, and my daughter, Alina, is 3 years old. And they are pretty much everything to me. And so I not only want to be with them here in this life, but the life hereafter as well. So that's probably the first thing. The second thing is I'd like to be able to make a difference in other people's lives for good. So I try and find a lot of different ways that I can do that. And I would consider myself a spiritual person. I believe in heaven and hell, and I believe that there is a place beyond this life. I don't know what it's called, but I would, for the purposes of this phone call, I'm going to call it heaven, and I would like to be there. And I believe it's a real place. So I guess you would say my third dream or my vision is to, after this life, be able to live in that type of place. You know, I guess what I would say is, you know, if there was on my tombstone when I died, I'd probably want 4 things on my tombstone. The number 1, I loved God. Number 2, I loved my wife with all my heart. Number 3, I loved my kids and showed it. and number 4, that I loved other people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the driving force in my life, my family and my relationship with my Heavenly Father, and relationship with other people and trying to help make a difference in their lives.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the things that impressed me the most when I heard you talk, was just how important the family was to you. How important is it to stay focused on your primary goal? You gave me like 4 of them that are your primary goals. How important is it to stay focused on those, and how do you do that?
Well, in my opinion, the only thing you take with you when you die is what you've done for other people and the relationships you have in your life. You know, beyond that, you can't take your car with you, you can't take your house with you, you know, you can't take your boat with you. And so if that's really the case, then how important it is to stay focused on your goal? It's everything. You know, I don't want to be on my deathbed and have all kinds of regrets. In fact, I went to, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but just last week, my next-door neighbor committed suicide. He had 2 little children as well, two little boys, and a wife.
Mm.
And I went to his funeral, and at his funeral, one of his brothers read a letter that his dad had written to him, my next-door neighbor. And it was to be read when their father had passed away. Well, their father was still alive, and his son had passed away, my next-door neighbor, and so the older brother thought it was a good time to read the letter. And when he read the letter, the father in the letter was saying, you know, I wish I would have done this, I wish I would have done that. You know, pursue your passions and dreams. I didn't in my life. And it made me sad to hear that. It made me sad to hear that this man had dreams and goals, and he never stepped out of his humdrum life and taken risks to pursue those goals. And I don't want to be on my deathbed with regrets. You know, I don't want to be on my deathbed and say, man, I should have spent more time with my son, or I should have put that project down and went to my daughter's activity. This morning, right now, I've got several deadlines hitting at me, and I'm just running all over the place. And this morning, my daughter had an activity over at her kindergarten or preschool outside, and the parents were invited. Well, I decided to set things aside and go over there, even though I had a lot of stuff to do. My wife met me over there. There was hardly any fathers there, but it was just an enjoyable time. And as soon as I showed up, my daughter looked out. She was about 25 feet away from me. She looked out. She saw me walking up, and she started yelling, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy!" Well, that, my friend, makes it worthwhile. And so you've got to stay focused on what's more important in life, and the only way to do that is to have a more eternal perspective on life. Sometimes we get caught up in the moment of the day, or our goals for that day, or the fires that are going on in that day, and we don't step back and have a more broad perspective of our life. If you do that, then you're going to focus on those things that are more important in your life.
Well, you know, that's sort of an interesting perspective, because we've both been to 2 seminars over the last 2 weekends, Stu McLaren's Idea Incubator and Yannick Silver's Underground Secret Agent Seminar, and it's amazing how many people there are so focused on making money and gaining fame. Sometimes you wonder whether they realize, just as you said, that the family and the people that God puts into your life are so important.
Yeah, that's right. And I remember you and I had a conversation at Yannick's seminar about that whole thing, and I told you, yes, but can your product sell? And then you told me, well, sometimes maybe it's not that important that it sells, but that I do it.
Yeah, well, if the Heroes...
We're having this phone call right now.
Well, if the Heroes program can make a positive difference in one person's life, I've basically done my job here on Earth. You know, philosophies have a lot to do with what we do in our lives. What is the specific philosophy or philosophies that guide your life and your decisions?
Well, I'm sitting in my chair. I have several offices that are about 3 minutes from my home. And I'm sitting in my chair right now in front of my computer, and on the right-hand side, I'm looking at a picture that I have that sits on top of my printer that looks at me every day. It's a picture of me, my wife, and my 2 children. And there's a quote on the picture that says, "No success can compensate for failure in the home." And that was a quote given by a man named David O. McKay. No success can compensate for failure in the home. And that is a guiding philosophy that I've had for a long time. And one of my New Year's resolutions was to make sure that I find more balance in my life and that I put my most important objectives in my life first. And so that was one of the reasons I created this picture of me and my family and this quote. It reminds me, right about 6 o'clock every day, I look up at that quote and I ask myself, it forces me to ask myself, is what I'm going to do in the next 3 hours worth more than going home to my children and my wife and spending time with my family? And I ask that question to myself at about 6 o'clock every single day, and I always get the same answer. Go home and spend time with your family. Now, there are a few times where I'm under the gun, and I've got to complete commitments that I have to other people that have actually paid me. And so sometimes very rarely now, I have to stay sometimes. But most of the time, the answer is go home and spend time with your family. And I've got that thing right in front of me that I always look at. No success can compensate for failure in the home. So that's my first guiding philosophy. My second guiding philosophy is basically, what you give is what you'll get. I believe, I think it's a Zig Ziglar saying, if you want to get what you want in your life, you simply have to help other people get what they want in life. And I'm a very true believer of that. Just recently, I entered into a business partnership with a fellow, and it's a very significant partnership, and it was all a result of me giving to him without asking for anything in return. And so when you give, you're going to get. Those 2 philosophies have really served me well.
Mm-hmm. Well, what is your perspective on goodness, ethics, and moral behavior?
That we should do them? Well, I have a personal and private philosophy on ethics and moral behavior, and I also have a business philosophy on that. So my business philosophy is pretty much if you're honest with people, people will be honest with you. And number 2, that people are attracted to honest people. When you're honest in all your dealings, it's going to build trust and confidence in your relationship. And that's going to build your reputation, and other people are going to want to do business with you. And so when you're completely honest with somebody, or that person knows that you're going to be completely honest with somebody else that they refer you to. Mm-hmm. That's very important. My wife was talking to me the other day, and she was with a lady that was in a car, and they were driving down the road, and this lady kept complaining about this one family. Complaining, and finally they stopped at the house to see this family, went inside, and then this lady started kissing and hugging them. And my wife said to me, I wonder what that lady says about me when I get out of the car. Mm-hmm. And so complete honesty is extremely important, especially if you're a marketer. Because as marketers, especially direct response marketers, we have a tendency to stretch the truth sometimes, and that is dangerous. In fact, one of my, I guess you'd say, role models in this area is Marlon Sanders. Marlon Sanders is a very well-known internet marketer. That guy is honest to the bone. He is truthful to the bone. Mm-hmm. You'll never get screwed by Marlon Sanders. Mm-hmm. On many occasions, we've had several conversations about writing copy and making promises and guarantees and things, and he always is always very, very, very careful to always tell the truth, not hype things up so that people have above average expectations of what you're trying to sell to them and things like that. So that's my business philosophy on ethics and moral behavior. Number two, my personal and private philosophy on ethics and moral behavior is, listen, it is God's requirements. You know, I believe in a God, and I believe that one of his requirements for us here on the earth is to act ethically, to be moral, and to be good. And so, as a requirement that he's given to me, I have, in my own private life, an obligation to be ethical and moral. If not, then, you know, like the Bible says, that is sin. And remember, I want to go to heaven. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't pay to act. And besides that, you know, just how much are you willing to give up for your own personal integrity? You know, how much are you willing to sell your integrity for? That's, to me, there's no price on this earth of which I'm willing to sell my own personal integrity. So that's kind of my approach to that.
Boy, that's true. And when you get in the industry, it's your personal name and the dealings that people have had with you determine what your success is going to be. We've seen so many people just drop by the wayside because they took the short-term view and tried to make some money fast, but forgot about the long term. You know, it seems that whenever we go through life, God puts a lot of difficulties and trials and tribulations in our lives. How important is it to take a positive view of setbacks, misfortunes, and mistakes?
That's a good question. You know, you mentioned that God puts them in, sometimes God puts them in our place. Sometimes we put them in our place. Sometimes they just come as a result of life. And so, you know, the first thing you need to know is that failures and setbacks are an integral part of the success formula. No successful person has never had setbacks or failures. There isn't a successful person that's never had a setback or a failure. It is an integral part of being a successful person and having a successful business. And so if you look at it like that, then, you know, it should be water off your back. It's kind of like cold callers, you know. Cold calling, you're going to have, you know, out of 100 calls that you make, you're probably going to have 90 or 95 people say no to you. But 5 are going to say yes. Now, if you knew that statistic right up front, then you welcome the no's because you're getting to the yeses a whole lot faster. That's how it is. That's how we should look at setbacks. There's been some people say that you have to have 7 failures before you get your first success. And so if you just understand that is part of the success formula, it'll help you approach it a lot better. You know, setbacks and misfortunes build experience, and experience is what causes success. And so without setbacks and misfortunes, you would not have the experience that you need to be successful. And so building experience through setbacks is very, very important. And I always say, you know, fail fast, fail cheap. That's the name of the game. You got to fail fast, and you got to do it cheaply as possible. Then you cut your losses, and you can move forward and get that, a very cheap experience.
How do you do that?
I'll give you an example. At one time, I had probably too much money for my good, and I went into the mobile home business. Believe it or not, I bought a bunch of mobile homes that had been repossessed, and I got them for maybe 40 cents on the dollar. And so I took those mobile homes, cleaned them up, and went to resell them. Well, it was a lot harder to resell them than I ever thought. It was a lot harder to clean them up than I ever thought. And I made serious mistakes by not checking to make sure that all the taxes were paid when it was sold to me. And I ended up with a massive tax bill because none of these guys who owned these mobile homes, or at least a lot of them, never paid their taxes. And me being the rightful owner of them now, I had to go pay the taxes. I couldn't go back to the people who had sold them to me. And so I had a bunch of taxes. And I even had one guy pick up his mobile home and just haul it off. Just haul it off. I mean, I lost a ton of money in that business. And so I learned a lesson that that was not the business for me, and that I need to be very, very careful when I make acquisitions and check the background, things like that. I mean, so that's my approach to setbacks and mistakes. I've made a lot of them, and I'm grateful for each one of them.
Well, that is, it's good to be grateful for those things that happen in our lives that make us better people and just make us wiser on the way things that we want to do don't work.
Right.
You know, how important is it to make decisions quickly? You know, you made some quick decisions in buying those mobile homes. Do you think that it's wise to make decisions quickly?
Well, I believe, I kind of have this philosophy, make methodical decisions, but act very fast. So once you've made the decision, make sure you move very fast with massive action. But your decisions, I'm not going to say you should do them fast or slow, but they need to be somewhat methodical. You need to have thought them out. I rarely make decisions off the cuff anymore. Usually I will sleep on something and let it stew in my mind for a little while. It helps me to have a better approach to the decisions. A lot of times I've not done something that I really wanted to do and I was very excited about doing, for the simple fact that I thought about it, I thought about some of the consequences, and I decided against it. So, you know, if you're listening to this recording, make decisions, but make them methodical decisions. Try and think them through, and then simmer on it overnight. And I would say also beware of going to a lot of people and asking them about things. You know, most people out there are risk averse. And in order to be successful, you have to take on risks. And so most people, just by the mere nature of being an entrepreneur, a lot of people are going to poo-poo on your ideas or your thoughts, your actions. And you can't have that type of negative influence in your life if you're going to be successful. You've got to be able to take calculated risks, make methodical decisions, move quickly on those decisions. And if you're going to fail, make sure you fail very fast and very cheap.
Well, one of the things that prevents people from making decisions or even taking action is fear and doubts. How do you overcome your fears and doubts?
Well, that is true. I mean, a lot of people have this fear that, well, they have just a multitude of fears. I know I sell a product called the Coaches and Consultants Marketing Bootcamp. And there's a lot of coaches. I tell these people, find a niche and go after that niche. And they have this fear that if they go down that niche, that they're not going to be able to find enough customers. They don't have the expertise for that niche. There's a multitude of fears that they face that stop them from going after a specific industry niche. And my philosophy is that the way you overcome doubts and fears is by just going out and doing it. When you do it, you gain experience. And when you gain experience leads to success. And when you experience success, that breeds confidence. And confidence is the opposite of fear and doubt. So when you do things, you gain experience. When you gain experience, you'll be successful. When you have success, it'll breed confidence. And a lot of those doubts and fears will just go away. Let me give you a good example of that. Many years ago, I was a missionary. And as a missionary, we used to go knock on a lot of doors, door to door. And boy, the first 5 doors were always very scary. You know, you knew you were going to get rejected. But still, just going to those doors and knocking on the doors and not knowing what was going to be behind those doors, it was kind of a scary thing. But you know what? After the 5th door, then it became kind of mechanical. And the experience kicked in, and you were able to face the rejection very easily. You know, if someone slammed the door on you, just went to the next one. someone slammed that door and cussed at you, you just went to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
But the first 5 doors were very difficult
Mm-hmm.
because of the doubts and fears that you had. But just going out and doing it, you gain experience. When you gain experience, you experience success. When you experience success, that breeds confidence, and confidence is what does away with your doubts and fears.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Well, it does. Well, weren't you down in Bolivia when you were doing that?
That's right.
That had to be pretty scary.
Well, there were certain neighborhoods that were, believe it or not, affluent. Most of the places that I served in it was dirt poor. I mean, Bolivia is the second poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere behind Haiti, and
Mm-hmm.
Haiti has an AIDS epidemic, which is one of the reasons they're so poor. But Bolivia is a landlocked country, and that's what makes it economically poor. But I remember there was an area where there was a lot of money. Most of it was drug money. And we went door to door there, and people would just get irate at us. And so, once you do things, and once you step out there, stopping someone in the middle of this, trying to sell something that nobody wanted was a difficult thing.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to hear about religion,
Mm-hmm.
Especially from someone stopping them in the street.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a difficult thing. But the more you did it, the more you gained experience. The more experience you got, the more successful you became. The more successful you became, the more confidence you had, and then you never had a problem with doubts and fears.
Mm-hmm. That is amazing. When you're doing something, you wonder what the rewards are going to be. How important is it to be of service to others as a source of joy?
Well, I think service is the purpose of our existence. I believe that with all my heart. I believe service to others is the purpose of our existence, because service to others is the exact opposite of pride.
Mm-hmm.
And pride is the downfall of mankind. I mean, you look at any and every problem that exists in the world today, and it's because of some source of pride.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say money is the root of all evil. Well, no, the love of money is the root of all evil.
Mm-hmm.
The love of money is a manifestation of pride. Look at all the problems we're having politically in the world. It's all a manifestation of pride. When you serve other people, it humbles you, which is the opposite of pride. I would say, number one, you need to serve your family first. I really believe that, God's great test for a person, one of the reasons they are here on this earth is to be tested to see if they will choose good over evil.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the greatest test that we have is how well we serve our family. I really believe, Ralph, that one of the very first questions that the Lord's going to ask us on the day of judgment is how we treated our wives or our husbands,
Mm-hmm.
how we treated our spouses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the second question he might ask us is, how did you treat your children?
Mm-hmm.
So that is very, very important. There's a saying in the Scriptures that says, when ye are in the service of your fellow beings, you're only in the service of your God.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that comes from the Book of Mormon. I happen to be a Mormon, and
Mm-hmm.
we consider that a body of Scripture.
Mm-hmm.
The Scripture says, when ye are in the service of your fellow beings, you're only in the service of your God. And so when you serve others, it's as if you were serving Jesus Christ. In fact, there's a scripture in the Bible that says something like this. Don't quote me exactly, but if ye have done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Jesus talking to his disciples.
Mm-hmm.
If ye have done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, meaning the God, it's easy for us to do favors for famous, rich, and wealthy people
Mm-hmm.
because we think we're going to get something in return.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's difficult to do favors for people who we know are not going to give us anything back in return.
Mm-hmm.
We're just doing it out of the sheer goodness of our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of when Hurricane Katrina came around. I'll tell you, for me, that was a wonderful time in my life because every Saturday here in Houston, a group of us men would get in our cars and we would drive over to Louisiana and East Texas to the towns that were hit the worst, Silsbee, Louisiana, and Slidell, Texas. And we would cut trees all day, or we would pull carpet out of flooded homes, or we would take the walls down, gut the walls out to get the mold out. And every week we did this for several months. And so it was one of the most fulfilling and wonderful times of my life, even though I worked my darn butt off.
Mm-hmm.
It made me thankful that I work on the computer, on the internet, because I have an appreciation for people who actually have to go out there and swing a hammer. But man, it was tough work, but it was one of the best times of my life, because the people that we were helping, they had no words for their gratitude, and it was just a wonderful feeling. If you think in your mind about a continuum, in your mind's eye, Ralph, try and think of a continuum. On the left, a continuum, or a line, I guess you'd say. On the left-hand side is you, and on the right-hand side is other people. And let's say, that continuum went from 1 to 10, 10 being other people, 1 being you. And let's call that the service continuum. I really believe that those people who are heroes in this world are the ones that fall on this. Well, let's just say that continuum represents the amount of service that you do for either you or other people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you fall on that continuum up in the 8, 7, 8, 9 area, then I think you're really serving the purpose that you were put for here on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does. I know that God said that if you want to be the greatest in the kingdom, you would be servant of all. And I think a lot of people miss that. I think that's why there's so many problems in families today, and just the lives of individuals. They're serving themselves and don't experience the joy of serving others. There's so many people that are so bitter, they've lost their gratitude for the good things that they have because they're only thinking about themselves. So many people I know who are depressed or just sick of life, they can immediately turn it around by helping others. Sort of like what you guys did for the people with the Katrina catastrophe.
That's right. And when you do that, just like when you said, do you experience service to others as a source of joy? That's true joy. Going out and getting drunk, that might make you happy, but it's not joy. Joy, to me, is something that's lasting. It's long. It's something that's fulfilling. It fills the inner void in our lives. Going out and finding some girl to sleep with, that does not bring lasting joy and happiness.
Nope, sure doesn't. It sure doesn't. Well, David, who are the heroes in your life now?
Well, my first hero is my wife, because she is just awesome. Her name is Ingrid, and I really do respect her and look up to her for a number of reasons. Number one, she loves the Lord as much or more than I do. She really has her priorities in order. She knows what's the most important thing in life. She cares about other people. Most of the money that she gets, she spends doing things for other people. She is a wonderful mother. She dedicates so much time of her life. We're lucky in that we make enough money that she can stay at home, but she dedicates her time to her children, and sometimes it's not easy. Being a parent is not easy. And she does a magnificent job of working with our children. She is also a marathon runner. So she gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and she goes running till 6 in the morning, every single morning. She does it that early so that it doesn't disrupt any part of our day, her family's day, getting her children off to school, having me get off to, my office. And so she'll go and run very, very early in the morning when we're all sleeping. So she keeps herself extremely physically fit. She's so attractive. She is just a wonderful, wonderful woman, and everybody who knows her just loves her. Everybody who knows her just loves her, and she does not have an enemy in the world. So she would be my very first hero.
Mm-hmm.
My second hero and my third hero, there are two men in my life who I've really felt they are mentors to me. They probably don't know it, but they have been real mentors to me. These guys you don't know because they're just personal friends of mine. One's name is Rick Cuevas, and the other one is Mark Anderson. Rick Cuevas lives here in Houston. Mark Anderson lives up in Provo, Utah. Both of these men I've admired for as long as I've known them. I've watched them from afar, and the reason I admire them so much because they have attributes that I want to have. One of their attributes is that I've never, ever, ever heard them say an unkind thing about another person. That's one attribute. Number two, they don't get all emotional about things, meaning they don't fly off the handle. They don't get upset. They're very, very mild-mannered, mild-tempered people. I've never heard them raise their voice for anything. They're just mild-mannered, soft-voiced men. Number three, they're humble. They would never call attention to themselves for any reason. In fact, they are always the person telling other people how good they are, the other people are. When these people are very accomplished, these two men, they never call attention to themselves. They're always been kind and understanding of me. I remember one experience with Rick Cuevas where I was asked to help him work with some youth, and I made a commitment to that, and it turns out that I had to go out of town every single week, and I felt so guilty about that, and he was taking the entire load for me. And I remember committing to be somewhere sometime on a Wednesday, I remember it was, and I had to call him up. After I'd done this so many times, I called him up and said, Rick, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I know I committed to this thing. I just cannot make it. And he had the most loving response to me. He didn't hem or haw or anything. He just said, David, that's okay. You do whatever you need to do. Take care of your business. I'll make sure that everything is taken care of back here. It made me cry.
Yeah.
These two men are just giants in my life. And the world doesn't know who they are. They're not famous in their local community. They're not celebrities. They're just two humbled, mild-mannered men. But in my opinion, in the next life, they're going to be the celebrities. Those are the guys who are going to be the superstars. There's another man named Tom Spinks. He's a business partner of mine. Just a wonderful man, very mild-mannered. He always makes sure that he gets the bad end of the deal. He's just a wonderful, wonderful man, and extremely successful and very, very wealthy. And, he tells me, Dave, I say, why don't you go do this and this with your money? He says, Dave, I make enough money. He lives right next to his other children. They all have breakfast together. These are grown children. They have breakfast together in the morning.
That's amazing.
How many children say, I don't want to live near my parents. These children want to be next to this man. He's so wonderful. Anyways, those are some of the heroes in my life.
Well, how important is it to have trusted friends or a mastermind group to bounce your ideas off?
Well, to me, they've been quite important. The more I think I know stuff, the more I find out how much I don't know. In fact, I was having a conversation with a friend about Google AdSense. Google AdSense, for you listeners who don't know what that is, it's a form of generating revenue from your website on the internet. And I've been doing it now for close to a year and a half, 2 years. I've just done just about everything, known to man in Google AdSense generation. And every time I say, well, this is a fact, someone shows me 5 examples where that's not a fact. In fact, I was wrong. And so you don't know everything. And the more you know, the more you find out how much you don't know. And I will tell you that the Internet has accelerated how information is shared. And so having a mastermind group and having a circle of close friends that you can share ideas with you has gotten infinitely easier. Infinitely easier. You know, now, if I have something I want to get feedback on, I can just go to one of the many discussion boards about marketing and just post my thoughts or my idea, or maybe I created a website or something and I want to get feedback on that. And I get a host of people coming on telling me what their thoughts and opinions are. People, some of them, they're not that experienced, but some of them are very experienced. So not only do you need a mastermind group, but the Internet has accelerated just how you can go out and get feedback and share ideas and things. So, in fact, on my website, marketingbestpractices.com, I have a forum. And when I have a new thing coming out or something experimental, I'll go to my forum and I'll ask the members of my forum, you know, can you see this video? What thoughts do you have about this idea? And I get a wealth of feedback from them, all for free, people that I respect. Let me just give you an example of that, Ralph. I was in a process of placing a very expensive advertisement, full-page ad in a very expensive magazine. And it was going to cost an awful lot of money, and I didn't want to make a mistake. And so I went over to the copywritersboard.com. This is Michael Fortin's board where a lot of copywriters hang out. And I posted my ad there, and I asked the guys, what do you think of it? And I got some of the highest-paid copywriters on the Internet giving me feedback and sharing their ideas about my advertisement. And because of that feedback, I completely changed a lot of the copy and the layout of that ad to make it 10 times better than it was when we started out.
That's amazing. Yeah, well, there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors, that's for sure. Who do you feel are the real heroes in our society today? They're not getting the recognition and rewards that they deserve.
Well, it's like I mentioned, people like Rick Cuevas and Mark Anderson, no one knows who they are, but they are the real heroes. Teachers in our society. I'll tell you why teachers are real heroes. Number one, they make a significant and long-lasting impact on people's lives. And number two, they don't do it for the money, because very few teachers get paid a lot of money. And so they're doing it for all the right reasons. So teachers in our society, social workers, those people who have jobs that are dedicated to helping other people, I think those people don't get a lot of recognition. While here you see celebrities getting tons of recognition, and those, in many cases, those are the people that you don't want to emulate. Now, I'll tell you who I do think is a real hero, and that is someone who uses his celebrity status to benefit other people. People like Bono of U2. Now, that guy, he spends an awful lot of time and his own money to help people rise out of poverty. And he calls attention. He uses his celebrity status to help underprivileged people. Those are the people, I really like those guys, because they could get caught up in their own celebrity status and put themselves above others. But they use their celebrity status as tools to help other people. Those are the people that I really look up to.
Well, what are the things that parents can do that will help their children realize that they too can be heroes and make a positive difference and an impact in the lives of others?
Well, that's an important question, because I believe that all of life's problems start in the home. All of our national problems and all problems start right within our homes. It's how children are brought up. And I believe mothers hold the key. Mothers and fathers hold the key to the future of mankind. I think, number one, remember, your question was, what are the things parents can do that will help their children realize that they can be heroes and make a positive impact on other people's lives?
Mm-hmm.
So let me give you what I think.
Okay.
Number one, if you're a husband or a wife, you need to be a great husband or wife. Kids look up at the relationship their parents have with each other, and they emulate that relationship in their lives. You'll notice that the parents who fight with each other, their children fight. They fight at school. They fight with their girlfriends and boyfriends. They fight with their spouses. They fight with their business associates because they saw their mother and father fighting. So what can you do as a mother or father to help your children overcome that? You be the best husband or wife you can be. You fight out. You get conflict out of your home. Kids, my personal children, Sterling and Alina, they just love to see me and my wife kiss and hug. Mm-hmm. My son will come up, oh, kissy, kissy, but he just loves to see it. In fact, sometimes he asks, Dad, will you go kiss Mommy? Mm-hmm. They love to see that because somehow a sense of security and love is transmitted to them when parents love each other. That's why, the divorce rate it's just alarming, the divorce rate. It's alarming. In fact, I started a website called marriageadvice.com just to try and combat in my little own way relationships between men and husbands and wives. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, if you're a father or a mother, you got to be the best father or mother. And I hear a lot of people say, well, I don't spend a lot of time with my kids, but I spend quality time. I think that is bunk. I don't think that there's such thing as quality time. You need to spend quantity time with your children. Mm-hmm. That's what they require, quantity time. There's no such thing as quality time. That's one of the reasons I put my picture up next to me that says no success can compensate for failure in the home, because it doesn't matter how wealthy I get, how much money I make, and even if I use that money to benefit mankind, if I have failed in my home, I am a failure. Mm-hmm. Okay? Number 3. Again, this is my own opinion. Number 3. And let me just go back to that, because I'm even going to get bolder with my opinion. A lot of people will say, well, it's my husband's fault that we got divorced. Well, that might be true. And all the divorced people out there are saying, that is true. But I'm going to tell you, I've been married for 16 years, and our marriage hasn't always been easy. But we have really taken the time to work through any of the difficulties we've had in our marriage. We've stayed faithful and overcome a lot of things through communication. You can do it as a couple. It can be done. And if you're having problems, you need to go see a marriage counselor. I do believe that there are couples that have habits that are so ingrained that they need a third-party person to help them overcome their habits. Number 3, you need to be a good example. Okay? If you don't want your children to cuss, stop cussing. If you don't want your children to smoke, stop smoking. If you want your child to make his bed, make your bed. If you don't want your children to go watch R-rated movies, then what are you doing going watching R-rated movies? If you don't want your children to lie, don't lie. Children will do as you do, not as you say. Every parent knows that. So number 3, be a great example. They need to see you. Like, for instance, for service. If you want them to give service to other people and be a real hero, because real heroes give service, they need to see you giving service. When I went out to Hurricane Katrina, I put on a yellow shirt because that was my service shirt, and I wore that every weekend. When my son saw me put on that yellow shirt and go out on a Saturday, he knew I wasn't going to play with him on that Saturday, but I was going to go out and give service. That got embedded in his mind. And now, just the other day, there were some scenes on TV where people went in and helped Katrina victims. It was on television. I said, "See, Sterling, Daddy was doing that. That's why Daddy put that yellow shirt on." And he understands that. When he sees that, he emulates that. You know, what is important to you will be important to them. Have you ever noticed how many athletes have parents that were athletes? How many people out there that are in professional athletics, their parents were professional athletes? Now, why is that? Because athletics was important to their parents. And because it was important to their parents, it was important to them. Things to your children will be important that you show them importance. If it's important for you to make your bed, they'll see that. If it's important for you to not cuss, they'll see that. If it's important for you to not smoke, they'll see that. If it's important for you not to watch R-rated movies, they'll see that and they'll emulate that. Anyways, now let me jump off my soapbox because I'm a parent, and that's an important thing.
Well, those are good advice. I think that one of the other things that a lot of the heroes that I've interviewed so far say that kids actually look at what you do compared to what you say. I think there's probably more damage been done in homes when people say, "Don't do as I do, but as I say."
That's ridiculous. That is a ridiculous. You know, that's a statement of a weak person.
Or, you know, isn't that true? Well, how do people actually become heroes?
Well, remember what I said? I believe the purpose of a person's life, why God put us here? He put us here to serve other people. There's only two things that you take with you: your relationships and the service you did for other people. And so if they want to become heroes, they need to waste and wear out their lives in the service of others. Now, I think it's important to pick out heroes and to emulate those people, as long as you're picking out the right people and emulating. None of my heroes make a ton of money. The two men that are my heroes, I make probably 2, 3, 4, 6, 10 times more than those guys. But yet I would give my left arm to be one of them. You know, I'd give up all the money I had to become one of those men. So it is good to pick out heroes and emulate them, as long as they're the right heroes.
Well, how do you find a balance between, you know, being of total service and actually providing for your family and for your children's children?
Well, that's a good question, because I think you need to schedule opportunities for service. Schedule activities with your family. You need to proactively put those things in your life. People are creatures of habit. If we don't proactively make changes in our lives, changes will never come. Right? Do you believe in that?
Yeah.
Well, so how do you find a balance? You have to physically put that balance in place by scheduling. Now, remember I told you I have that photo of me and my family that says no success can compensate for failure in the home. Well, that was one of my New Year's resolutions, to find more balance in my life. So what was one of the things I do? At 6 o'clock, I always look at that picture. I have a thing that rings. At 6 o'clock, I get up and I look at that picture. It forces me to question myself. Is what I'm going to do in the next couple hours more important than me going home and being with my family? Also, you know, you want to schedule opportunities for service. And I think you should volunteer. You should join some volunteer organizations, organizations that you truly believe in, and participate in them. It just so happens that, you know, the church that I belong to provides me with a lot of different opportunities for service. I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful that it provides me for opportunities for service, because if it didn't, then, you know, I might not be doing those things. So you have to be proactive in doing that. Now, does that mean you're all out there all day doing that? No, of course not. And in fact, that's hardly ever the problem. The problem is getting away from your selfish life and making time for your unselfish life.
You know, that is a hard thing to do. How do you do it?
It's just exactly what I just told you. I schedule times. my assistant here in my office, her name is Beth, I really admire her and her family. You know what they do? They sit down with a calendar and they say, we're going to go camping once every month and a half. And they pull their calendar out and they put on the calendar, these are the places that we are going to go. Then she calls up, makes reservations, and puts money down on reservations for their camping throughout the year. So now they're scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Covey gives an analogy about the important things in life and getting things done. And I'm sure that you have heard this if you've read the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He was talking to a classroom, and he was talking about, I guess he was talking about time management, and he had a big jar in front of him, and he put a bunch of big rocks in the jar. Now, I'm not exactly sure how the story goes, but he put a bunch of big rocks in the jar. And he asked the class, now, can I get more rocks into this, jar? And they said, well, of course. You just put smaller rocks in there. So they put smaller rocks in there, and they filled up all the cracks between the big rocks. And he says, can I get more in this jar? And, of course, the smart kid said, well, yeah, you can put sand. So he puts sand in the jar, and the sand fills up all the little cracks between all the small rocks and the big rocks. And he says, now, can I put anything more in the jar? And the students were kind of puzzled. He says, I can put more in the jar. And he gets water, and then he pours a bunch of water into the jar. And so more and more things kept going into the jar. And then he said at the end, what was the lesson that you learned from this? And they all said, you can get a lot of things done in one day. You can put more things into your day than you think you can.
Mm-hmm.
He says, no, that's not the lesson that I wanted to teach you. The lesson I wanted to teach you was, if you didn't put the big rocks in first, you never would have been able to get them in.
Mm-hmm.
The big rocks represent the most important things in your life. And the most important things in your life are giving service to others and your family and your wife. Every Friday night, me and my wife have a standing appointment with the babysitter because we go on dates every Friday night. It's just an appointment we've made. And so you've got to be able to put the big rocks in first. If you don't put them in first, everything, all the little fires and details of this world will take over your life.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Well, that really does. And I think that you've given us some incredibly good advice. And I really appreciate your time, David. I know how busy you are and how important having a balance in your life of working and taking care of your family actually is. So I just, again, really am appreciative of the time that you took from your busy day to answer these difficult questions.
Can I add one more thing, Ralph?
No, I would love it if you would.
One of the questions that you might add to your interview.
Oh, that's right.
Do you have a life goal that you want to achieve before you die? Because I think that everybody ought to have, some specific life goals that they want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
One of my life goals, and the reason I add this is because it kind of gives an insight into my life.
Mm-hmm.
When I was working down in Bolivia, I saw a school down there, and and in this school, the school produced milk and bread. And it actually turned into a university a couple years later. I went back to Bolivia, and the high school had turned into a university. Well, the students who came to this school worked in their off time producing bread and milk that they would sell out into the city, which in turn paid for their tuition that kept the school going. So it was a self-funding school. And the kids that came out of that school learned the value of hard work. They learned the value of responsibility and accountability, and they were also very well prepared academically. And it's always been my goal in life to build a school, probably overseas somewhere where your dollar can go farther.
Mm-hmm.
That might be in South America. Both me and my wife speak Spanish, and so we love South America and Central America and Mexico. Either a school down there or other parts of the world. That's one of my life goals. If anybody is listening to this broadcast recording, if if you're interested in that life goal too, send me an email, because I want to make a list of people. And one of these days, I don't know if it's this year, next year, or the year next after that, I'm going to go down to one of these countries and I'm going to set up a project where I can get a lot of people who are maybe in the internet marketing field, the field that I'm involved in, to go down there and build a school for some local people. Something that will get us out of our money-making jobs and get us out of our normal lives and go down and help some other people. Sometimes I wish the big seminar was the big service project, and we would take 500 people, and instead of spending $2,000 going to the big seminar, we'd spend the $2,000 going down to a country and using that money toward building something to help other people.
Yeah, boy,
although
that's
I go to seminars too, and I pay a lot of money for them. But I mean, that's one of my life goals. And if any of you listening to this are interested in this, email me. Let me keep a list of that, because someday I'm going to call on you, and we're going to go have some fun together.
Well, that's one of the major goals of the In Search of Heroes program, is to teach young people all over the world, no matter what country they're in, how to make money using the internet and how to market the products of their local artisans through the internet. So maybe we can work together on making that a reality for every person throughout the world if they have an internet connection.
Yep. Great.
Wow, that's a great dream. That's part of my dream too, David. And again, I really appreciate your time and just your attitude of service. I just wish that more of the people that I've interviewed have that particular perspective.
Thank you very much, Ralph. I appreciate it.
Have a great day, and thanks again for what you do.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.